Hello, my name is Grechishkin. I'm from Mount Vernon High School, and I'm delivering this original oratory for the 2020 Bellevue Invitational. What are you ladies gossiping about? Hey, you're taking notes on this, right? You should smile more. Hey, is it that time of the month? This meeting is a big deal. You might want to wear your hair down for this one. Are you sure you actually understand this? Hey, can I please talk to someone in charge? No, these floors are for executive offices only. Interns go downstairs. These little phrases that run from well-meaning but poorly worded to intentional dismissal of a woman's ability are a daily occurrence in all our lives, defined as microaggressions. The death by 1,000 cuts. As reported by the study published in Women in the Workplace, 64% of women reported experiencing microaggressions, discouraging career goals and leading to physical as well as mental harms. Only by first recognizing these statements as a form of structural violence and then acknowledging our own role in propagating these microaggressions can we finally move towards creating spaces that are inclusive and safe for all genders. Sexism permeates every aspect of our culture. And when sexism is present in forms that are palpable and familiar to us all, it becomes even harder to identify it and call it out when we see it. We've all seen the classic Valley Girl accent play out in pop culture. Brittany from Daria, Cher from Clueless, and most of the main female characters in Heathers all share that hallmark quavering voice that peaks up in intonation at the end of the sentence. This phenomenon is actually something that speech pathologists have come to refer to as uptalk. As explained by a study conducted by the University of California, uptalk dates all the way back to the 1950s and originated as a way for the speaker to hold their ground while they're talking. Graduate student Amanda Reichart explains that by placing emphasis on the end of the sentence, women employ a technique called floor holding, where an interruption is anticipated and then held off because of the emphasis placed on the end of the sentence. Women are thus more likely to use uptalk because they're the ones who are the most likely to be interrupted in professional contexts. And yet, cultural perceptions ignore these nuances. And now, uptalk is something that is perceived as a sign of a shallow girl who cares about nothing but shoes and shopping. The degradation of women's intelligence continues in professional settings as well. Susan Fleming, senior lecturer at Cornell, describes how women are placed into a double bind when they work in professional settings. If women have a more feminine leadership style that focuses on communal and gentle traits, they're perceived as weak or a pushover. On the other hand, when women take on more masculine leadership traits, they're seen as bossy and overbearing, when those same exact actions in men would be met with support and praise, meaning that it creates a system where it is impossible for women to win and be seen as strong leaders. This trend of capable and intelligent women being looked down upon continues through mansplaining. Present everywhere from the classroom to Twitter, mansplaining has only become a common term in the late 2000s, despite being present for the duration of the patriarchy. Kate Mann, author of the book entitled, explains that, together, there are numerous societal components that have all worked to make mansplaining a mainstay in our society. The first is the assumption made on the part of the man that the woman doesn't know as much as he does about the subject. This works in tandem with the societal conditioning men have undergone to always feel like they are the most powerful in the female-male dynamic, and the pressures that women feel to be polite and avoid interrupting. The term himpathy has actually come to describe women's reluctance to call out mansplaining, even if they're experts on the subject, due to fear of creating feelings of guilt within the male upon being called out. Mansplaining furthers the societal perception of males as those who are wisest and most capable, and continues the degradation of women worldwide. When motifs of sexism are present throughout society, internalized misogyny is hard to avoid, and places even more undue pressures upon many women. There are two key impacts that construct internalized misogyny: self-objectification and the acceptance of gender roles. According to Utah State University, these impacts can cause distress, identity foreclosure, disordered eating, and mental illness. The idea that women can avoid the impacts of sexism if they conform to societal standards causes a turn towards harsh, unattainable beauty standards and a forced perception of other women as competition. Allowing for sexism to go unnoticed when it isn't overt creates harsh impacts on all genders that go unnoticed and become the new status quo. When women are subjected to misogyny on a daily basis, the physical and emotional impacts are devastating. For starters, negative stereotyping harms women's careers by making them less likely to join traditionally male-dominated fields, and making them less likely to be offered leadership positions across all jobs. Research from Psychology of Women Quarterly has found that experiences of sexism often shared symptoms to PTSD, and made women more likely to turn to binge drinking and smoking as a coping mechanism. Double standards and societal stereotypes make the chances of mental illness uniquely due to sexism higher. And sexism that seems indirect leads directly to real-world violence against women, because according to the University of Sussex, sexism directly contributes to rape culture and makes violence against women seem more excusable and normal to us all. These impacts grow beyond the individual scale and manifest themselves on international and global stages. In the United States, this is seen through the lack of female representation in politics. The Democratic primaries this year had one of the most diverse candidate pools seen in recent years. But despite Democrats priding themselves on inclusivity and progressive ideas toward gender, a Washington Post analysis revealed that covert sexism was still a driving factor in candidate selection. Utilizing a scale of hostile sexism, the study placed primary voters into 4 categories, ranging from least to most sexist. Then, the votes were broken down and analyzed within each quartile. Elizabeth Warren, the top female candidate, was neck and neck with Biden for the vote when the least sexist quartile was analyzed. However, this percentage of votes dropped by 30% when the most sexist quartile was analyzed. Additionally, a Utah State University study found that women who experienced higher levels of internalized sexism were more likely to support candidates who promoted sexist ideals and directly went against policies that helped women when voting. Exclusion of women is mirrored on a global scale as well. Stereotypes that cause the devaluation of women leave them out of crucial discussions and cause the whole world to suffer for it. Numerous studies have found that women being involved in discussions involving peacemaking have led directly to better outcomes. But only 9% of negotiators in UN peace processes have actually been women. When women are excluded from these discussions, issues that impact marginalized groups are ignored or swept under the rug, and it becomes more difficult for sustainable and inclusive peace to be created. The most difficult thing about addressing everyday sexism is that it seems normal for all of us. By training ourselves to call out ourselves and others when we feed into sexist actions, it becomes easier to break down the barriers women face step by step. Asking the perpetrator questions that call for clarification or explanation of the harm in their actions is a way to resolve conflict without making the other person feel like they are under attack, thus making them more susceptible to educating themselves, rather than feeling defensive and on the attack mode. For women, coping with internalized sexism can involve reaching out to a mental health professional, or beginning to break down the idealized version of a woman that society has constructed. These small actions may not feel life-changing, and they definitely won't solve sexism after we implement them right away. But by doing things little by little, we are able to move towards a society where women feel safer and we see directly more involvement of women in politics, peacemaking discussions, and the workplace. Creating a society that is inclusive should be a priority to us all, and by breaking down microaggressions, we are coming one step closer to creating that society.